Hello, welcome back to my channel. In this video, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to give to you my opinion on what could be the most critical, the game that can provide the most critical results for each team in the SEC. So we're going to do this in alphabetical order. We have Alabama Crimson Tide coming off an 11-2 year last year, winning the Sugar Bowl. Here's their schedule right here. You have the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders, or as I like to call them, the Miami Hurricane Conquerors, and then you have the Texas Longhorns, USF Bulls, and then they get into their SEC competition with Chattanooga in between their third to last and last game against Kentucky and Auburn. If you ask me, I think the most critical game for Alabama to win is Texas A&M, and the reason why it's kind of like what the Late Cake podcast that covers college football calls your swing game, so to speak. But I think the Texas A&M game is probably the most critical on this list for Alabama to win. Yes, I know you have your big headline games like the Texas game and the Tennessee game and the LSU game, and of course the Iron Bowl. But the reason why I have Texas A&M as your critical game to win, because if you lose on the road uh, at Texas A&M and you have Arkansas, Tennessee, and LSU on the road your very next three games. Now, granted, Arkansas is not expected to do much, but they gave Alabama a little bit of a tough going last time, and plus just having them in between Texas A&M and Tennessee, and then LSU a couple of weeks later, that's a tough spot to play Arkansas at that point of the season, especially considering you've already played in two tough games against Texas and Ole Miss. So I think the Texas A&M one could possibly be a trap game for Alabama. Um, Here you have, again, we're going to do this in alphabetical order, Arkansas football schedule. They got West Carolina, Kent State, BYU, LSU, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Alabama, Mississippi State, bye week, Florida, Auburn, FIU, and then Missouri. If you ask me, in this game, in this schedule for Arkansas, I know the Texas A&M one creates a lot of attention for them. But I think winning on the road at LSU would be a monster momentum boost for the Razorbacks. Last year, the Razorbacks had their third string quarterback in because their top two quarterbacks were out, and they only lost to LSU by 3 points. LSU, who many people thought were a good team last year, I thought they were a little bit uh, overrated in my personal opinion. But to have LSU on the road is going to be a tough place to play. But I don't think Arkansas is going to be afraid to play LSU because they played that team tough last year, and they're going to have a healthy, or at least expected to have a healthy KJ Jefferson heading into the game. So if I was Arkansas, I would say this would be the critical game to win, because after that you got Texas A&M, your Southwest Classic rivals. You got Ole Miss, Alabama, and then Mississippi State before heading into your bye week. That's a tough tough 4 game stretch. But if you can beat LSU, then you're gonna have major confidence going up against your next three opponents. Um, I think LSU would be a great victory for Arkansas in this matchup. Then you have the Auburn Tigers. Excuse me, I was reading the screen. New head coach Hugh Freeze got him from Liberty. As you can see here, three non-SEC games. You got California in between UMass and Sanford. Then they're on the road at Texas A&M before playing Georgia. I think it's a I think it would be a big critical victory for Auburn if they could win at Texas A&M, because they of course had their Deep South oldest rivals in the Georgia Bulldogs. Then they have a bye week, but then after that, the next two games afterwards are LSU and Ole Miss. So that's by far the toughest stretch of Auburn's schedule this entire year. And winning on the road at Texas A&M, who has a new look offense, who's expected to be much better this year. Winning on the road in Texas A&M would be a big boost for War Eagle. Then you got my Florida Gators. I've already covered their schedule. I predict them to have a 7-5 record. I would say the game that would give Florida would be very critical is winning on the road at Kentucky. Now you're probably thinking, why not Utah or Tennessee? Because after Kentucky, you have Vanderbilt who beat you last year. Then you're on the road at South Carolina. Then after your bye week, you got Georgia. Then you have Arkansas right between Georgia and LSU, and losing to Kentucky in back to back for 3 consecutive years right now. That would do a lot of damage to the morale of the program, and it would and that would be just a bad omen um, to lose on the road at Kentucky when you're heading into your the meat of your SEC schedule this year. So for Florida, this is the critical game that I think Florida would have to look at for a victory. Next team right here is the Georgia Bulldogs. Um, Back-to-back national champions. What I would say the critical game for them to win is against, I would say it's probably against Ole Miss because they don't really have a tough schedule this year, or at least not by Georgia standards, because Georgia is at the top of college football. So a lot of teams looked matched up against them are not going to look that impressive anyway. But to have Ole Miss and Tennessee back-to-back games, um, that was the and if you were to lose that one and then you're going to be on the road at Tennessee, that could cause you to possibly lose 2 games in a row because some losses can carry over into the very next week. So if you're a Georgia fan, Ole Miss would be a game I would have circled in red and that you would want to, outside of course your rivalries with Florida, Tennessee, Auburn, and Georgia Tech, but Ole Miss is the game that you do not want to overlook if you are a Georgia Bulldogs fan. Afterwards, you have Kentucky Wildcats, Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron, Vanderbilt, Florida, Georgia, Missouri, then Tennessee, Mississippi State, Alabama, South Carolina, Louisville. I would say winning at Mississippi State would be an important game for them to win because look at these final 3 games here. You're going up against Alabama, who until shown otherwise, is still one of the top programs in the nation. You have South Carolina, who looks to be much better, who looks like to be much better this year than what they were last year. Then you have Louisville, who a lot of people are saying is an underrated team right now, bringing in Jeff Braun from Purdue, and that's a tough 3 stretch of games for Kentucky to end their year with. And that's the Mississippi State game is right after Tennessee, so you don't want to lose on the road to Tennessee and then have it be just a morale drainer and then end up losing to Mississippi State before you play Alabama and South Carolina and Louisville. If you're Mark Stoops, you want to at the very least end the year on a strong note. Then you have LSU. Yeah, I already covered their schedule. Did their preseason schedule prediction. I gave them a 10-2 record. You have Florida State here, Grambling State, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Missouri, Auburn, Army, Alabama, Florida, Georgia State, and Texas A&M. Um, if you're an LSU fan, what I would say is you don't want to lose I would say this game right here I would have circled red because losing to Florida, if you were to possibly lose on the road at Alabama, that could possibly turn your team into a tails and turn your year into a tailspin. I don't think they're going to lose to Georgia State as a result of losing to Florida. But what I mean is, if you were to lose on the road at Alabama, but then you followed up with the loss at home against Florida, that would be a heartbreaker. And then a couple of weeks later, you have Texas A&M on the road, and you would think it would be a much easier victory for them, but that's what you thought last year against the bad Texas A&M team, and they still found a way to beat you. So if you're an LSU fan, if you sorry about that, yeah, sorry that y'all saw that. If you're an LSU fan and you see Florida, you don't want to lose this game. If you were to possibly lose to Alabama and then have 2 losses in back-to-back weeks. Next up, team Mississippi State. Southeastern Arizona. Southeastern Louisiana, excuse me, then the Arizona Wildcats, then the LSU Tigers, and they're at South Carolina, and then you have Alabama, Western Michigan, Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, Texas A&M, and then Ole Miss, of course, the old Egg Bowl rivalry, one of the most hated regional rivalries in college football. Uh, Mississippi State losing on the road at Arkansas right after you're coming off a bye week. right when you're getting to really head into the thick of your SEC schedule towards the end, then because you're on the road at Auburn, then you have Kentucky, then you're on the road at Auburn, on the road at Texas A&M, excuse me, losing to Arkansas right after your bye week when you had 2 weeks to prepare before you play Auburn, who I think is going to be a little bit better. Then you have Kentucky, who's going to be tough, and then Texas A&M, whose offense should look better, and then you have your rivals a couple of weeks later. Coming back on for a bye week and beating Arkansas would be nice for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Then you have their in-state rival Ole Miss. Uh, if there was a underrated game that you don't want to lose if you're an Ole Miss fan, is Georgia Tech. This right here is a trap game. You're right between Tulane, who beat USC in the Cotton Bowl, but then you also have Alabama right after Crimson Tide. Excuse me, you have Alabama right after Georgia Tech, and having Georgia Tech in between those four games, Tulane, Alabama, and LSU, loses to Georgia Tech after you just throttled them last year when they were getting ready to change head coaches. That would be a big loss for Lane Kiffin and his crew uh, at the Ole Miss Rebels. So losing to Georgia Tech, that would be a crippling loss right there for the Ole Miss Rebels. Missouri, they're expected to be under the radar team in the SEC. They're bringing back a lot of players from last year, especially on defense. They had a top 25 defense in FBS last year. Here's their games: South Dakota, Middle Tennessee, Kansas State, the Memphis Tigers, Vanderbilt, LSU, Kentucky, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, and Arkansas. A huge victory for Missouri. I would say I would say Kansas State. Kansas State and Missouri. They used to be rivals out in the Big 12. They used to play each other along with the Kansas Jayhawks. Nobody. Missouri doesn't have a lot of love for the two football teams in the state of Kansas, and beating Kansas would be a nice win for that program. Nice win for the fan base, and just to bring back an old rival and have their year start off on a good note with such a big win against an old rival in the third week of the year. Missouri Tiger fans, I think, would be happy about that. South Carolina here, North Carolina, Furman, Georgia, Mississippi State at Tennessee, Florida, Missouri, Texas A&M, Jacksonville State, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and Clemson. I think a swing game right here for South Carolina would be to win on the road at Tennessee to prove that last year was not a fluke, that South Carolina is truly better than Tennessee, and that they can beat Tennessee on a consistent basis. I think this victory will be even better than beating Tennessee and Clemson last year, being the fact that it's on the road, and Tennessee is projecting to be a good team this year with Joe Milton returning to their offense and with the wave of momentum that the program is riding right now under Josh Heupel. For Tennessee, I think this game right here at we were just talking about South Carolina. Well, I think the same thing for Tennessee, that this is a swing game for them. You don't want to lose to South Carolina in back-to-back years, um, heading into your bye week, because then you got Texas A&M, Alabama, and then Kentucky right out of the gate, and to lose to South Carolina again, and this time at home, that could swing the momentum and the trajectory of where the program is heading in 2023. Texas A&M, I would say, a swing game victory for them would be to beat Alabama. They've given Alabama troubles over the years under Jimbo Fisher. If they could get another victory against Alabama again heading into their and then carry that over into Tennessee, and then after that you have a bye week against South Carolina. This could be a huge uplift for the Aggies football team after the bad year that they had in 2022. So if they were to get a victory against Alabama, I would think that would be a very nice boost for them and to help them carry on with their season. And for Vanderbilt, not really a lot of, I guess you could say, critical games for Vanderbilt. But I would say for Vanderbilt, going on the road and beating Florida would be, I'd say, the biggest feather in their cap, because Florida has dominated the rivalry. I think Florida has only lost to Vanderbilt twice over the last 31 years, and going on the road and beating Florida back-to-back years, I think that would be a good year for Clark Lee and that program. And it would actually kind of show that, uh, Vanderbilt can consistently win some games in the SEC division. Not that they're going to be competing for the SEC title, but you know what? That they can play with some of the big boys in the SEC, and it would show that Clark Lee does belong at Vanderbilt, and that Vanderbilt can carry themselves in what is one of the toughest conference in college football. So those are my what I call the critical swing games, if you will, for every SEC team heading into 2023. Those are my thoughts.